The Con Panel, brought to you by Old Brother Productions and Norse Legion. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Con Panel. With me, as always, is my host, Kevin Liell.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm holding in here in Connecticut, not too far from where you live, of course, but we're doing well. So you remember when we started doing this and I said that I had the perfect actor to start with?
Yes, I do recall. Yeah.
So that was Sandtrooper himself, Anthony Forrest, and you know, all that's going on in the world, he was a little busy with family and business. So luckily we didn't get him at first, because now we've had 4 chances to screw up, and now we're going to have the best interview we've had with Sandtrooper and fixer actor himself, Mr. Anthony Forrest. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm very good. How are you? This is an exciting. You know, this is my first Zoom meeting. I've not Zoomed before. So
yeah, we're getting a lot of that. Actually, I think most of the actors we've done, they've not done a Zoom meeting like this.
Yeah, I'm a novice here. I'm a rookie. So I'll let you lead me through it.
And we have to mention that, of course, you are coming live from Germany, from Berlin.
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
2.5 years. Yeah.
2.5 years, and I was actually going to come out there to Berlin in May, but of course, with all this happening, it's not going to happen. But that's a fantastic city. I think it's a great place.
Well, it's an exciting place to be also, because I've got family here. My daughter lives in Berlin. I have a son that lives in Hamburg. Another son that lives in Rotterdam. And so then when everything went crazy with COVID, then we managed to get my son Sam back from Los Angeles to come and join us, because we thought, well, I want to have the family together through this. Because it's always hard when you have family spread out. I have 2 sisters in Ireland, and we got a lot of family across Europe. So I thought, let's get them back. Let's get everybody so we're all within, if we need to get a family get together, then we can do that.
The sister in Ireland, is that the one with all the guns?
Yeah. I could have showed you pictures of them if you wanted. There's 55 in the collection. Yeah.
They're all antique guns and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're some of them are pretty rare. So she's not comfortable about having them around. So they're all the garter took them, and they're in the barracks now in Cork. So they've stored them there. They've been there for a while now, because she feels more comfortable having. She's not into guns. It was her husband that was into guns, and so.
Okay, forgive me for getting personal, but just to let everyone know that Anthony and I have been friends for about 11 years. Anthony was the first Star Wars actor, or any actor, that I interviewed at New York Comic Con. And Paul, when was that? 2009?
That was 2008 or 2009.
It couldn't have been 2008, because my daughter was born, because that's when my daughter first came out. But I figured before we go on to the conversation, we got to bring up Star Wars. So Anthony, of course, you had 2 major roles in Star Wars. I like to think they're major roles. So
that's very kind of you, Kevin.
You have what I would say is probably the most famous deleted character that wasn't already pre-established in some other media or comic book, but you probably have the most famous deleted character in the history of motion picture.
Well, that I suppose Cammy's character as well, because we were like a double act for that.
Oh yeah, you got to give a shout out to Koo Stark. Koo Stark? So she played Cammy, which was one of Luke's friends on Tatooine, and one of Luke's other friends, of course, was Biggs. We all remember him. And then Fixer was the other one, and that was played by Anthony. I was wondering if you could maybe give a comment on Mr. Lazoner, which is his last name, I believe.
Yeah, I never quite got a handle on that, because it's Lays, so I figured, well, maybe that's why the opening sequence is when you first see Fixer, he's like half asleep, and Cammy's on his lap and everything like that, and so they're kind of cuddling, and so I guess Lays is the Fixer character. I always thought was the guy that he ran it like a garage shop. And he repaired things. And so when Luke tells Uncle Owen that he's going to go pick up the power converters, is it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's where he's going. He's going to hang. And so Uncle Owen doesn't really like him hanging out with Fixer in that crowd, because maybe he thinks they're, a bunch of, no goods or something like that. It's one of those scenes where he's got Fixer's kind of set himself up where he's got the hub where, everybody comes and hangs out there. Plus, Fixer has the only girlfriend probably for several hundred thousand miles.
Yeah, I mean, she's the only other, young girl in Star Wars other than, of course, Princess Leia.
Yeah.
So well done, Fixer. You might have got deleted, but you got the hot girl.
Well, that's it. You see, yeah.
And then so fortunately, when you were filming Fixer, another part came along, probably the one that you're, of course, well known for.
Right. Yes, the guy.
Care to elaborate, or do you want me to talk about it? I'll be more than happy to talk about it.
No, I can talk about it. Sandtrooper. Yeah, that was. So I kind of figured that somewhere down the line, George Lucas owes me a favor because he asked me, "Can you do me a favor?" And so I've never called it in, but it was one of those things where I wasn't expecting it. Something obviously they needed an actor to step in and do the scene with Alec Guinness. And so they dragged me off the hotel and took me out to the set. And next thing I knew, I was dressed as a Sandtrooper. I actually couldn't, because there are no mirrors or anything, so I didn't even know what I looked like.
You look like the other actor standing next to you.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. But I couldn't check my hair. Not that you would see it anyways. So what the deal was is George had said to me, he said, "Don't have to worry because you're going to be wearing this costume and you have the helmet on, and nobody's going to know it's you. Just play the scene and everything will be fine, and it won't affect the Fixer's character." And lo and behold, Fixer didn't make the cut, and the Sandtrooper did.
Did you see The Rise of Skywalker, the most recent Star Wars movie?
No.
Okay, count yourself fortunate because it sucked. But anyway, the ending of it, and I'm going to spoil it. Is it okay if I spoil it for you?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. What about the people out there in your audience? Are you going to spoil it for them?
Oh, they've all seen it.
I think every person that's watching this show has already seen that movie. I think it's pretty safe. So the movie ends where Rey, the main character of the new series, she returns to Tatooine to kind of have this cathartic moment because Luke Skywalker's dead. And so she's hanging out at Luke's house. Remember Luke's house, the little dome house?
Yeah.
And this woman comes up to her and says, "Hey, who are you?" Because she's, the house you're standing next to has been empty for years. Who are you? And she says who she is, and that's the end of the movie. And I saw that, and I was like, dude, that would have been awesome if that was Anthony Forrest. Because the woman comes up, she's about, she's like, 66, 67 years old, about your age. And right. you would have been perfect for it. And I saw that. I'm like, damn, why didn't they do that with to give you a chance to redeem the fact that you were deleted in the Fixer scenes.
Right. Well, maybe they should, what they should do is they should actually have another branch off. They're doing all the different versions. They're going to do, all the different characters and that. They should do a Cammy and Fixer episode so that you have Cammy and Fixer and tie that in somehow. And then you find out the story of what happened to them.
Preaching to the choir sounds like a good idea. Actually, I didn't read the book because I didn't like the movie, but the Last Jedi, which was the second to last Star Wars movie, if I'm not mistaken, it starts out where Luke is having kind of a dream, and he's living on Tatooine, and he's actually married to Cammy. So I heard that, and I thought of you, and I was like, oh, that's terrible.
So Fixer's brokenhearted.
Apparently, but
and he goes, he runs away to hang out with the Dewbacks.
So moving back a little bit, and of course we've had many discussions about the Sandtrooper. So I'm going to do a little bit of repetitive questions from our past interviews. Right. I hope you don't mind. But what was it? How long how long was filming for the Sandtrooper scene? How long did that take to do?
That didn't feel that long to me. It felt maybe half an afternoon. When I arrived, a lot of it was already set up in terms of you know, the angles they were going to shoot, where they were shooting from, etc. So a lot of it was already preset. And so for me, it was just like walking into a ready-made situation. And so as I got out of the car, George had walked towards the car with a script, and he gave me the script, gave me his script actually, and I should have kept it maybe. And and I was walking, reading the scene and seeing what the scene was about, because I hadn't really studied the scene. And so as I was walking, then the props guy started, and the costume people started, you know, dressing me and fitting me out. And then when I was pretty much dressed and I couldn't move, because that was an impossible costume to move around in, because those were the very early costumes, and they were very uncomfortable and very itchy. And so that was when I got a chance to actually meet Alec Guinness, and we had a chat and everything was pretty much set and ready to go.
Was it, I mean, you know, here's one question I've never asked you. What was it like when you're reading in the script that this guy talks to you and changes your mind with the Force? So you're one of the first actors ever that had to react. You are the first actor ever that had to have you had to react to the Force happening to you.
Right.
Was there any kind of guidance or information?
Well, there wasn't really any guidance or information, because what I was lucky with is I could, having read through it, I could follow Alec Guinness. He's leading the way. And so while it starts out, what I had to do is I had to get in my mind what was the attitude that I was going to have. And so I saw this as a roadblock. I saw this as I was like playing a cop, stopping, you know, it's a street patrol. And so it's actually just somebody coming in and stepping in, somebody drives up and they're, you know, I've been through border checks and everything like that. I know what the routine is. And, you know, I've been stopped for speeding and things like that. So it's, you know, there's a routine to it. So I just picked up on what the routine is I'd experienced in my own life.
Yeah, there's Paul, we were in Germany at a convention about 6-7 years ago, Anthony and I, and there's this group of guys called, they're Sandtroopers. They're a segment of the 501st. And you probably know more than I do. The Sandtrooper detachment or something like that?
Yep.
And
the Mos Eisley Patrol, yeah.
Yeah, MEPD.
That's right, the MEPD.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so at least the ones I spoke to, they're all cops.
Right.
So if you're a cop and you're a Star Wars fan, Anthony Forrest is your favorite actor. And we were like, everywhere we went the whole weekend, this little group of guys with orange hats would follow around. It was great. I loved it, though. I loved hanging out with them. One of them was an English guy, and I kept calling him Copper. And he thought that was fun. But I hope you and your lawyer don't mind, Anthony, but the video that we did, the panel that we did in November in Boston Super Mega Fest, I have that actually on YouTube. So you can actually have a look at it. What we did is we did a live, what do you call it? A live reading? What do you call that?
Yeah, it's more like a skit. It was, you know, it was like a sketch. It was like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
I don't know. So we had somebody dressed. Do you know Sean Todd, Paul?
Yeah.
So we had Sean Todd dressed as Luke.
Yep.
And we had a Ben. And then we had someone stand in for 3PO. Then we had them sit down, and we actually redid the scene live. And I gave some George Lucas stage direction, and they all had scripts, and it was perfect. So you can check it out on the CONPANEL page. It's about a 6-minute video, and then High Adventure comes up, and they're playing music with it. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was a whole routine that you put together.
And then, because a couple people told me beforehand, they're like, that's kind of a silly idea. Why are you doing that, Kevin? And then afterwards, everybody said it was just brilliant.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, because it's you know, you go in, it's like anything, you know, when you do a panel, and that often it's you know, it's discussions, and it's about the scenes, and it's about, you know, what your experiences were. So this was kind of fun. It was kind of like it was out of left field. The audience weren't expecting it.
Actually, they were. Actually, I advertised it on the.
Did you?
panel.
Okay, I wasn't expecting it.
You were. Did I not tell you we were doing it? I must have. I had to tell you we were doing it.
Well, I didn't know about the band, and I got an idea of what we were going to do. We were going to play the scene, right? Yeah. But
Well,
I didn't
the band was the last.
realize how elaborate it was going to be.
The band, of course, was High Adventure, and Glenn Nelson, the leader of High Adventure, is also the guy who did our theme song, which you hear at the beginning and the end of the program. But he's a good friend of mine. But that's a great show, Boston Super Mega Fest. It's held yearly in November, and I spoke to the owner just last week, and he's kind of in the air if it's going to happen. Much like you were saying, I think you were going to a convention in Utrecht or something like that. Yeah,
no, I'd been asked about it, and for me, it was just personally, it was just a little. I felt it was too early.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be going to any conventions probably till 2021. Celebration hasn't been canceled yet, which is a surprise, but it's going to be. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think we just have to be very careful. I think
onwards and upwards. Paul, do you have any questions?
I do have some questions. Some of them are sort of technical costume questions. As a former member of the 501st myself, I have a little bit of a
spit out your nerd words.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can see that. Yeah, you've got quite a lot there.
Yeah, I enjoyed my time doing that. I'm actually kind of curious about your Sandtrooper's undersuit and what was that actually?
That was I think.
Was it a wetsuit?
No, it wasn't a wetsuit. It was like a leotard.
Oh.
And the rest of it was my own underwear, I think. Although I didn't have an awful lot. I remember how the inside of the costume was really, really scratchy. It felt like fiberglass on the inside. You know how if you're making a fiberglass boat or something.
Sure.
You know
Itchy.
It really felt like that, and so I think it was more like a leotard it felt like a leotard. I can't, like I said, I wasn't really paying an awful lot of attention to what I was being dressed in. I was paying more attention to what the script was saying.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. But it's something in the 501st that has been debated since its inception. What did they actually wear? We've heard wetsuits, dry suits, leotards. And it's funny because most of the guys, we wear like Under Armour body stocking kind of.
Right. I think considering the heat, I don't think it would have been. It wouldn't have been a wetsuit.
Yeah, that would kill you.
Yeah, that would have been just too much because that. I think they would have thought the props or the costume department would have thought about the fact that it was going to be very hot. So, and especially once you started to put the costume on, you're just covering. There's nowhere for the air to go.
Right. Totally different type of question. What drove you to become an actor? Where did that start? How did that all come to be?
That was really, I had done quite a lot of drama when I was in high school. And when I came back, I kind of gone out on tour with a band of friends. And we'd gone out west, and when we got back, these are the days when you had a whole horn section of band. So there were like 9 players in the band, and so you could play a gig and you won't earn any money. I mean, each person in the band might earn $25. And so we pretty much came back broke. So I figured I got to do something else. This is not working out right now with the music and being able to support myself. And so then I had an opportunity. A friend of mine wanted to do some pictures and stuff like that. So I got some pictures together, and I went out and I found myself an agent, and I started auditioning. And that was really the process and how it started. I started quite early on being quite successful doing commercials. And so I had quite a lot of commercial work, and that kind of then allowed me to do more theater in that because I didn't have to worry because the commercials were taking care of the finances.
That's really cool.
It's a process, and today I think it's much harder for young people when they're coming into the profession, because when I was starting out, you could still meet the directors. Now there's a whole like hierarchy system where they want you to submit videos and things like that, and so you never get to meet anybody. So the directors never get to know who you are or what you've done or anything like that. Really, it's kind of cold in the way the process is run these days.
Very interesting.
Do you have any more questions about his undergarments? Because I want to know what kind of underwear Fixer was wearing.
Probably none.
White punch.
He was a commando.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. In that heat, yeah.
Oh.
Did you have one more question, Paul?
I'm good.
Good. Do you have any questions, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm checking out in the background all the stuff you guys have got lying, in your set dressing.
Oh, this is my office. This is where I do like all my Star Wars work, and I do drawing and stuff back here, and then of course this is my computer, so this is where I do most of my work, which is the graphics and things like jewelry and stuff like that. And then Paul, what do you got there? Wow, we're interviewing ourselves. This is great.
Yeah.
So this is just 501st stuff. This is my workstation where I cut films and videos and things like that. And then over there, I have a full service bar. So.
Oh wow.
He does. Okay. Paul has another show called Paul's Pub.
Oh God.
And we've done a couple. I've done an episode or two there, and
That's true,
a lot of drinking. But so what do you got behind you, Anthony? What you got there on your walls?
I've got. I don't have an awful lot of Star Wars stuff, but what you see behind me is posters. This is a poster that I'm trying to remember. That was Joe Corona.
Oh wow.
That one, and the other two on either side, that was a special. This one on this side was a special limited edition from Elstree 1976, the documentary, and then on the other side, that's the Japanese poster.
Mm-hmm.
From Elstree 1976, and I kind of like I've got the English version as well.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
And then so what are there? So you got into acting, and so here's something that's kind of interesting. Paul, I don't know if you knew this, but do you remember that old movie they did with John Lennon, like in the late '60s, early '70s, and him and what's that bitch's name we all go?
Yoko
Ono.
Be kind.
Dude, she destroyed the greatest band of all time.
No, they destroyed themselves.
Yeah, because one of them married Yoko Ono. Okay, there you go.
I think that, there's always a debate about the Beatles and what happened with the Beatles, and I think it's like having been in bands. There is always that undercurrent. You can get that undercurrent. Especially you had Paul and John who were the key songwriters, and they both had different directions they wanted to go in. It's a creative. These are creative decisions.
I disagree. I think she's. Well, anyway. So anyway, Paul, do you remember that thing where they had that? I think they called it the bed-in.
The bed-in. Yeah.
They're lying in bed, and they got signs on the walls, and they're all looking like hippies or whatever. And they had a bunch of reporters and stuff there. Well, did you know that a 17-year-old high school kid from, I think, Toronto, Canada, snuck
Montreal.
Montreal. So I guess we all know where this is leading to. So Anthony, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, that was kind of an unusual event. It was probably one of the things that actually I learned about courage from that moment, from that experience, simply because it was something I just took upon myself to drag a friend along, and I said, we're going to go and we're going to be part of this. And I just didn't. I kind of just there was a lot, some blagging here and there, and a lot of persuasion, but it was really about I wanted to be part of it, and lo and behold, I got us there. We got to the hotel. There was a lot of security in that, but I managed to talk us through the security. You got the manager of the hotel to take us upstairs, and we actually got a chance to join in the events. And there were a lot of, Timothy Leary was there. There was an awful lot of Tommy Smothers. There was an awful lot of interesting people that were wanted to be part of it. This was it was a big event at that time. And also,
And I should have tried to bring it up, but if you actually can look at the footage from or the photographs from that event, you can actually see a picture of Anthony standing next to the bed where John Lennon's sitting. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and then it was kind of awkward because the press guys, I was one of the few people in the room who was of a younger generation, and also I had longish hair, and so they wanted a picture, and so one of the press guys started egging me to sit on the bed next to John, and I think I don't know if John got a bit pissed with it, but so they got a picture of me sitting on the end of the bed with John Lennon, going. But it was crazy. Yeah, it was, it's one of those things that, that it had a big impact on my life. Yeah.
And then, so what kind of, I guess with your Star Wars background, you probably go to a lot of conventions. Is that,
I don't, that I don't do a lot. No.
No, you don't. That's right. You don't. I guess you don't. Because I was going to ask how much this affected your schedule. The whole.
No, I had last year when I met you in Boston, Framingham.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the time that I'd already made a decision then, and I was going to book pretty much myself off for 2020 because I had so much work that I had music that I was working on, and I had a lot of video projects that I was working on, and I felt like I wasn't spending enough time just isolating, stopping myself to actually just focus on those things and get them done. So it was not, I had nothing lined up for 2020 at all. And I only do maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most in any year anyways.
Yeah, that's the way to do it without getting fried. Because I do, I've started doing about 18 shows a year, and it gets really, really monotonous. I mean, they're fun to go to, and I do enjoy them, but because you do more than 5, and it gets crazy.
Well, for me, and this is just me personally, is if I once I leave my cave, so to speak, I get thrown, and it takes me weeks to get my head back around where I was. So especially if I'm writing or if I'm working on something and I'm editing and that, I need to keep myself focused. And so otherwise I lose the thread. And then I've got to start delving back into all the things that I wanted to try and achieve. And then I've got to go back in again to get the thread going again and to work.
Do you remember your first Star Wars convention?
That was Celebration 4 in Los Angeles.
That was my first Star Wars celebration. That was the first Star Wars convention I ever went to.
Yeah, Celebration 4.
We met there. I got your autograph on a Sandtrooper drawing I did, which I gave to some charity that was raffling off like a couple of years later. After you and I became friends, I had more autographs from you. I just sold that. I gave that one to a charity, but that was a great show.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was one of the things that what was fortuitous for me was the fact living in Los Angeles. It was a really easy show to do. I didn't have to travel. I could, and so that was it's just about getting downtown and things like that. And also, there was a lot of guests. I think there was nearly 40 guests there. It was a big event.
Oh yeah, they had a large number. David Prowse was there. Carrie Fisher was there. Peter was there, Jeremy. It was a great show. I worked in the real estate world at the time. I was a graphic designer for a real estate company in New York, and I went to that convention. I had no idea that there were shows like that in the world, that they had that much. I'm going to sound a little mercenary now, but like that much money being passed around because of Star Wars. I had no idea it was an industry, and I was like, I'm going to change my job because I'm in the wrong work.
Well, for me, it was really nice because there were a lot of actors that I hadn't seen for years. I hadn't seen Garrick for an awful long time. And Garrick and I, through the 70s and the 80s and that, we worked on quite a lot of productions together. So it was nice to be able to catch up with a few people. And I hadn't seen Kenny Baker since Tunisia. And, I'd spent some time hanging out with Kenny and when we were in Tunisia, because it was just a joy because he's just such a fun guy to be around.
Oh, he was funny. When we're offline, I'll tell you the funniest story I know with Paul Blake and Kenny Baker. It's hilarious, but I can't say it in public. But he was definitely a very funny guy. Yeah. And I'm lucky I got to see him one last time in London, actually. Were you at Celebration in London?
No, I've never done Celebration in the UK. No, I have they done two or they've done only one? I'm not too sure.
They did two. They did one in 2007 and one in 2016.
No, I haven't done. No. Celebrations. I did Celebration Japan, which was really interesting, and that was a fun experience. And then I did Anaheim, and then I did Chicago.
Yeah, that was fun. We got to hang out a little bit there.
Yeah.
But what's the? Did you ever sign anything weird?
Well, yeah, there's always something. Yeah, I think I find that one of the weird. It's not weird, but it's let's say it's unusual. Is when people want me to sign and then they have the signature tattooed on themselves. So they've got a Sandtrooper tattoo and then they have the signature tattooed underneath. That's happened a few times. I find that's kind of unusual because that's.
I spoke with permanent. One time I spoke with David Prowse and he said somebody asked him to sign his arm. And then he went off and got it tattooed, and the guy brought it back and showed it to David. And Dave was mad. He's like, I had no idea you were going to tattoo. My name's on your arm forever. He didn't like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I realized is it's actually better for the tattoo artist if you actually do a really good signature on a piece of paper or on a card for the tattoo artist. And then he can actually copy that really well, as opposed to doing kind of a half-ass signature on somebody's skin.
And how many of those do you think you've done?
I guess I've done about 4, maybe 5.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I wonder how many tattoo signatures Yoko Ono has done. I'm guessing 0.
Back onto the Beatles. You see that? Yeah. Enjoy the music. Yeah. Enjoy the music. That's what I say.
Would you say are the Beatles your favorite band?
There, some great albums to pull out and have a listen to. There's some great music there.
I wouldn't say they're my favorite band, but you have to acknowledge that they're the greatest band. I mean, I'm not a Yankees fan, but you have to imagine that they're the greatest baseball.
They had a great producer who was always considered the 5th Beatle. Right. There was a huge amount of exploration and musicality there. I suppose my favorite band, gives you an idea where my head's at, was Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
That's a great band.
That does not surprise
me at all. Yeah, that is a great band. I managed to see them perform in some very small clubs, and you know how many people are in that band. But I managed to see them play several times in Montreal in a very small club, and it was just awesome experience because they were such good musicians.
What year was that, roughly?
69, 70, 71.
He had a knack of finding the absolute best musicians in the world that nobody ever heard of, and a writing genius, incredible.
Yeah, and seeing it, there was these wonderful moments where it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced it, but the band would be on stage and they'd be walking around and they'd be kind of fiddling with their instruments and everything like that, and you're kind of just waiting for it all to happen. And then out of nowhere, Zappa would be standing there and he'd just put his hand up in the air like a 1, and they'd be right into the middle of a song out of nowhere, and you're just kind of blown, and it's like they would all, you didn't realize it, but it was like they were all on stage and they were counting. They all knew where they were going to be, or they all knew it was coming, and the audience didn't. And then you just got hit with this, and it was just this wall of sound that you got hit with, and just great musicianship and some interesting compositions. A great composer, I always think a very underrated composer.
Well, he had the knack of being able to compose from his head. He didn't have to sit with an instrument to necessarily compose. He was known to write things on trains and planes, and uh,
Oh,
that's
he could write the charts. He could do it all. I mean, you know, and I think it'd be. I actually went to see a performance of the London Symphony Orchestra doing Zappa. He wasn't performing himself, but he was there, and you know, doing some of his music. And it was just wonderful to hear it in a full orchestra. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. It's.
So we're making that official. Zappa's your favorite band?
Yeah, Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. Yeah, they were all great players. Yeah, they were all great musicians, great players. And
well, I'm not a huge Zappa fan, but you got to respect the fact that he is probably the most original contemporary performer we've ever seen.
Well, also as a composer, just surely as a composer, he was, you know, he had a lot of influences, you know, and he never, I don't think he ever hid the fact that he was influenced by people like Stravinsky and Edgar Varese and all sorts of influential classical composers in that. He was well studied. Yeah.
How long ago did he die, Paul? You know these things.
15 years ago?
Yeah, it's a while now. Yeah.
Oh, so he lived to the 21st century. I mean, I would have thought the 90s.
Let me double check.
There you go.
It's been a while. I'm breaking my rule.
But just to let you know, I'm a supporter of Black Sabbath and Motorhead, but the Beatles are up there, definitely. But while he's doing a little bit of research, Anthony, what are your favorite movies? Do you have a favorite film?
Lawrence of Arabia.
Really? Oh, you said that pretty quickly. You said that's a big movie. I never heard you talk about that.
Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia. Bridge on the River Kwai. Great stories, big epic films.
Okay, those 50s and 60s World War II movies. Those were some of the best.
Well, those were. It was also the scale and the performance. There's actually a little known film though. It's also one of my favorites, which is called Chimes of Midnight. It's a Orson Welles film. Originally shot on 16 millimeter, had no money. And it kind of shows you the guts that Orson Welles had. He let I understand from the stories that I've heard is he let the investors believe he was going to be making Treasure Island, and he still turned around. He always wanted to make Chimes at Midnight, so he took the money and made Chimes at Midnight instead of making it Treasure Island, and shot it in Spain, virtually, you know, very, very little money, but he, you know, his commitment to the art form was wonderful, and he plays Falstaff. And another film I liked was Catch-22.
Is that Gene Hackman?
No,
that was Bat-21.
Bat-21. Sorry. Very good. Oh, Paul, right on the spot there.
Now, Catch-22. That was. Alan Arkin and Art Garfunkel's in it. It's an amazing cast. Orson Welles is in it. It's a huge, wonderful cast, and it's just a sprawling story. You know, yeah. And Mike Nichols directed it. Another great director, Mike Nichols, wonderful director.
So you're an Orson Welles fan. You know, he was the first one approached to do or thought of to do Darth Vader's voice, and then George Lucas, who wanted to use him, but said that his voice is just too recognizable. You know, it would be like if Pee Wee Herman's voice came out of Darth Vader, it would have just been too obvious.
You just inspired me, Kevin. I think I'm going to have to do that now.
Orson Welles is Darth Vader or Pee Wee Herman?
Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, that was a bad analogy. I should have said something with like Will Smith or something, somebody with a real voice.
Yeah, it's Touch of Evil, wonderful film.
Charlton Heston, Touch of Evil, very good movie.
Yeah, great story. Just, you know, the way it's shot, the storytelling, you know, just you know, these are some great movies. There's been some great classics, you know, and yeah, more recent films. I don't know. I'd have to really put my hat on and go through some of the more recent.
Do you want to guess what my favorite film is?
Wow, Star Wars.
Yeah, probably. The first one, the one you were in was probably my favorite. What about actors? We talked a little bit about, I guess, Orson Welles, but do you have a couple favorite actors out there?
James Cagney and Richard Burton. Two completely opposite. You know, there's a dichotomy. They're very different crafts, but there is a version that was never allowed to be released. That they had filmed Richard Burton doing Hamlet on stage in New York, and the agreement was it was never going to be shown to the public. It was just going to be. But then they found, after Richard he had passed away, they found a copy of it, and I think it is just a monumental piece. His ability with the Shakespearean language, and there's these huge monologues, and it's almost as if he does them in one breath, and it's just the eloquence and the mastery of the English language in the spoken word and that voice. And from my point of view, James Cagney, I think he's one of the greatest movers on film. His physical presence and his body language on film is amazing.
Hell of a dancer too.
Yeah, but he had it all. I mean, he was a dancer. He could, he grew up in vaudeville, and so that his experiences were hardcore. And I love the fact about him is the story is that while everybody would go to the commissary, or they'd go to the restaurant, to the studios back in those days, he would bring a lunch pail with his lunch from home, like just a regular working guy, and he would sit and eat his lunch. So he'd actually have a lunch pail and not go fancy. He kept it all real.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. You were my first interview I ever did. My second interview was Ray Hassett, who was a rebel officer from Empire Strikes Back. And his first movie he was in was not his first movie. One of his first ones was Ragtime with James Cagney. Yeah. And then, so I had a series of questions to ask him, and one of them was, "What was James Cagney like?" And he said, "It was really cool."
I actually met Milos Forman for that film. I didn't get a role, but I remember when they were making that film. You know?
Right, that's because it's the same thing that Ray did. Ray was an American. You're obviously from Canada, but Ray was from North America, and you'd go to London as an actor. Richard LaPalmater, John Ratzenberger, a bunch of you guys would all just jump from different movies being made in London where they needed Americans, i.e. Star Wars. Both of those gentlemen, Ratzenberger and Ray Hassett, were in Superman, and I forgot about that.
Well, they used to have the Equity, British Actors Equity used to have a division, which was North American Actors Division, because there were quite a few people, and at that time there was a lot of work coming through. I mean, there was quite a lot of work that was being put together. And
through that, you did a couple World War II movies yourself, and a couple Bond movies.
Yeah, I did The Eagle Has Landed, which again, I've been always interested in behind the camera as much as I am in front of the being interested in front of the camera. And so I got a chance to meet with John Sturges, who was, again, a director who I really appreciated and admired. He'd made Old Man in the Sea with Spencer Tracy. Wonderful film. Another one, The Great Escape, Steve McQueen. Another great film.
Yeah. That is my favorite movie from the 1960s. I love that.
Again, The Magnificent Seven, another John Sturges film. And so this was an opportunity for me, and I thought, this is the director I want to be around. I want to watch him work. I want to be there. So I had that opportunity, and so and so I had a chance to chat with him. And also, I got to spend a whole summer driving around with Larry Hagman.
J.R. Ewing?
Yeah.
What the hell were you doing? What the hell were you doing with Larry Hagman?
Well, Larry was playing the colonel, and I was his driver. I was his sergeant, or I was his next guy. And so
you're talking about when The Eagle Has Landed?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good movie. I actually saw that movie when I was living in London, and I was living in Germany. I was in London, and funny to think that 20 years later I'd be friends with one of the guys who was in it.
Yeah. And I met some good people. Treat Williams,
He was in it.
Yeah, that was one of Treat's first films, actually.
Now, when you see Larry Hagman in your generation, do you think of him as Major Nelson, or do you think of him as J.R. Ewing?
Probably more J.R. Ewing.
Yeah, because it was such a bigger movie. It was a TV show.
Yeah, just because the amount of exposure that he had from that, and he also he was a heavyweight on the show.
Oh, he was great on that show. He's probably the biggest TV villain of all time until Tony Soprano came.
Yeah.
But so yeah, guys, this is like our 5th interview together. I can't believe we've done this so many times. Is there anything about Star Wars you haven't told me?
Star Wars that I haven't told you. Yeah, I guess personally, I would have liked to been able to see what George Lucas had put down for 7, 8, and 9.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree with you.
I think that's the biggest question I have about the whole kind of Star Wars saga, is the fact that when you have somebody who creates something in the way George does, and I asked him this question actually just because the same way that I had the gumption to go and want to meet John Lennon, I asked George Lucas, I said, how do you like directing? And he was very upfront, and he said, I don't. He said, I like to write. And so his energy and his visions start on the page. And so I would have liked to seen the continuation of what those visions were for 7, 8, and 9. And I just think it's a shame that they just got completely, put to one side, and because he was the originator, and it's like it's a novelist in a way, and so it's like you're getting somebody else to write the novels, and so it would have been nice to find out where George was taking it.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a full script for episode 7. And
Right.
then an outline for 8 and 9, if I'm not mistaken.
I got to see the outlines. It's floating around as a PDF online, and it is quite a bit different than what we got.
Whoa. Are you talking about Colin Trevorrow's outline or George Lucas's?
George Lucas's. There was an outline that's out there. It's as a PDF where the how it's the Journal of the Wills.
Right.
And they get to meet the Wills, and they're sort of behind the scenes manipulating everything in the universe. And Luke learns this, and the story goes from there. But
Right.
Which was pretty wild.
I'm already sold, because what they did to Luke in the everything that Disney has done since 2012, the worst thing they did was what they did to Luke Skywalker. Anthony, you're lucky enough not to have seen the last 2 movies, but they basically just urinated on the guy. It was worse than Paul asking you about your underwear.
Was it? Yeah, it was worse than that question.
And the fascinating thing about the movies themselves, the actors were fine. I don't doubt any of them, weren't sincere and good at what they did. The special effects team, as always, were at the top of their game. It was just the overall idea they had was just not good.
Didn't make any sense. Makes no sense.
But back to Anthony Forrest.
My feeling on all of these things is its story. It starts with story. That's the most important thing, is what is the story? And when you have a story that is made by committee, it doesn't seem to work. You have to have, there are people who create stories, and it's their imagination, and they manage to pull it all together. And I think that's what George Lucas was capable of doing with Star Wars. Is he created this wonderful universe, and he created this fantastic saga. And I think it's a shame that we don't get to see how 7, 8, and 9 would have panned out.
Yeah, and you say story by committee. That's not an exaggeration. There actually is a
committee.
They have a name. They're called the Star Wars Story Group.
Yeah, and that's I understand that from a television point of view, because you're trying to manufacture that's a real, you've got to get all these episodes out, and then you've got to get another season out and things like that. And writers get burnout. It happens, there's people, you lose inspiration and things like that. And so they replace writers and that. And so I understand you, especially when you're dealing with episodic, you need a lot of input from, to keep it going, to keep the momentum going. But when you're dealing with something like feature film, and you're dealing with a trilogy, and then you're dealing with the next trilogy and the next trilogy, then I think you should really stay with the source. Stay with the source, because that person has been living with this, sleeping this, that individual has been, that is their lifeblood. And they know that story, they've been living, they've been working with it for such a long time. And that's I think it's a shame we don't get to see that vision.
Yeah, and the thing with the story group started out as a group of people that were going to basically monitor the ongoing fiction to make sure it doesn't contradict and it all has a flow, so you don't have one planet doing something that some other planet should have done or whatever. And they were filled with people that were not creators. They weren't story makers. They were basically executives.
What you're saying right there about making sure there were no conflicts or anything, George would have solved all of that, because he knew what all
in his head.
It was all there. He wouldn't have to question that, because he knew how he would automatically know where to take it.
No, but what I'm saying is that, so the story group started getting the idea that we're going to write the story, and they were the ones that came up with the idea that Luke should be what Luke ended up being, and it was just and a handful of other ideas that I think just didn't work. Not to say there weren't things that were good about the new movies, but just the bad outdid, I think, the good, in my opinion.
Well, sometimes you start to feel, when you have a storytelling by committee like that, you start to feel that certain scenes and certain plot lines are just too convenient, too obvious. You go, and you go, oh, you could have gone further with that. You could have gone deeper with that. You could have made that more interesting, where you take it, you're taking the easy way out, just to make that one plot line marry into another plot line. So it's a process.
But we're coming down to the end of our interview. I want to thank you for coming, but I forgot to mention to you before we started. Do you have any avenues for selling your autographs? Because the Con Panel, which of course is the show that you're on, was designed to kind of be something that, because Paul and I both work in the convention world, and we wanted to kind of do something while we're all sheltering in place, so to speak. And right. So the Con Panel kind of fills it up with not just convention Q&As like we're doing now, but also offering if the celebrities that we have are wanting to sell autographs or whatever it is that you might have, even your CDs, because you have a musical background. Do you have a website or a Facebook page people can go to?
The website is www.anthonyforrest-starwars.com.
That's easy to remember.
And that is specifically around Star Wars. And so there's some merchandise there, and you can order autographs and things like that.
So Anthony Forrest.
What I do is,
I got it.
What I do is if you're ordering three autographs, then 3 and more, it's all 25% discounted. Simply because then the postage doesn't get crazy.
Okay, cool.
Because especially postage out of Germany is it's anywhere in the world, international, which a lot of stuff is, and I always want to send stuff with tracking numbers and things like that. So I won't be able, so if you
must be expensive to ship from Germany to the United States.
It can be, depending on what the item is, but then again, like I said, if you order 3, then it makes it more practical to order 3 autographs, and then you get and then you all go into the same package, and away it goes. And so it's a more practical way to do it.
I will be sure to add that to the link.
Yeah, we'll put that in the link, Anthony. So and you, our viewers, you can check that out if you're interested in.
And music, I've got music up on Spotify under Anthony William Forrest. and also under Love Can Heal the World, which is the initials of that is LCHTW. And if you go to that, you'll see some of the more recent stuff I've been doing, which is.
I loved it. I always wanted to see a video of you, and let me know if there is a video. In London, you see those guys like in the tubes, the subway, and they're playing instruments. They have to have permission to be there. They just can't show up.
I have a license.
A license to do it. And then there would be times that Anthony would pop up and play music like that. And I think that's fantastic. Is there any video of you doing that?
There is. There was a little bit. Actually, John Spear, who directed Elstree 1976, he's got quite a lot of footage, I think. But there's a little bit of it in the documentary. Okay. And I would go and do it, and I know people were filming me. People probably don't realize the fact that it was me or whatever. And I used to go and do it. It's a great rehearsal space. The only thing I did learn, it's probably one of the most polluted places in London down there.
It's the same in New York City.
Not great for singing, if you're singing, because you're sucking in an awful lot of bad air. But I used to really enjoy. I auditioned. You have to audition, and you get a license, and because of security reasons and things like that. And then you you can go and busk. And I used to really enjoy doing it. Yeah. Yeah,
we had Paul. We were at that celebration in Germany. We went to that awesome 501st party in Essen, Germany, and afterwards, I don't know if you brought a guitar or somebody gave you a guitar, Anthony, but he started playing.
I had a guitar with me.
And little Sandtrooper cosplayers came from like all over the place to just sit there and idolize at their Elvis. And it was because the look on their faces, they were like a bunch of 4-year-old kids looking at Santa Claus. It was great.
You are their god.
It was just it's just if you're writing songs and that, it was just it was one of the things I do. And so I've got a lot of material that I've written and recorded, and one of the great things that I have here is that I've got a complete setup as my own like home recording studio and everything. So I can actually produce stuff at home, produce videos. I've got equipment for that, and I kind of like that. It's and now in this day and age, this is the way it works. It's just the fact I think it was Francis Ford Coppola said there will come, and many years ago he said this, there will become a time when everybody can make a movie.
I believe that.
Or a web series talk show. And with that, we're coming to an end. So Anthony Forrest StarWars.com. Anthony's got some great music. You can at least just listen to some music there, or maybe buy a CD or two. Or
on Spotify. The best place to go is up on Spotify, is because that's easy.
Anthony, don't interrupt me on my own show.
Okay.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare ever interrupt me on my own show. I'm just kidding. I couldn't even hold a straight face here. But Anthony, I want to thank you very much for coming. And thanks for not being our first guest, because who knows how many problems there might have been. Actually, our first show went off pretty well, didn't it, Paul?
It went out without a hitch, yeah.
But this one was good too, because you and I have been friends, Anthony, for a long time. But I want to thank you, and hopefully we'll see you around the convention scene in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I like getting out to meet the fans and that, and and for me, it's I like to hear their stories. I find it interesting to hear all the stories, from people, who going to see the first Star Wars movies and stuff like that. That was, they were like 9 years old or whatever, and that's one of their favorite memories with their parents or with a family member and things like that. That it was a big, and so I like to hear those stories as well. And there's some great fans out there, and they have some great stories as well. Everybody has a great story.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you out there in 2021 and 2022 and thereon. But for Paul and me, Kevin, I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week on the CONPANEL.